What's up everybody and welcome back. Today is the InDesign tutorial number 2. So without further ado, we'll just jump right into things. And first thing I want you to do is open up your previous document. Hopefully you saved from tutorial 1. If you notice that we have 4 separate pages with facing pages on. And the first thing I want to show you / remind you is of the Windows drop-down menu. So the reason I want to remind you of the Windows drop-down menu is that is where because that is where you will find all of your little adjustment panels off to the right-hand side here. So we're going to be using a bunch of these today, so I just want to make sure that you have at least these 4. So pause the video if you need to. I want you to have your pages, character, color, and paragraph panels all activated. So of course you'd go up to Window, and you can see color is right there. Okay, so there is my color. And you want pages. There's pages. Good. Paragraph. And oh yeah, we're gonna have to go into types and tables for both character and paragraph. So be sure to activate those two. I already have mine activated. If you want to expand these panels, you can. I'm going to keep mine collapsed just so that it's more easily seen. But that was the first thing that I would like to teach you today. Next thing is something cool. It's called master pages. All right. So as we begin our magazine design project, what you might find is certain magazines have specific designs that stretch off from one page to the other, and they have certain things that repeat page after page after page. Almost like some type of little art down at the bottom here for page numbers, okay, at the bottom of each page. So I'm going to show you how to do that and how the professionals do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to activate the little pages flyout adjustments menu here. And you'll notice that it actually gives us a little tiny preview of each of the pages that exist already. But up here, you can see that there is a master page. These are your master pages. So let me kind of show you what they do. These pages are called master pages, and if you double click on them, you end up with your document kind of changing its looks a little bit because they actually control the whole document. So let me show you what I mean. First and foremost, I'm also gonna kind of kill 2 birds with 1 stone, and I'm gonna show you how to file place while using master pages. So watch what happens. I'm gonna go ahead and file, place. Now I've already created a specific example border here. So for most of you, you should be able just to find a little drawing that you've done way back when. Very tiny, maybe some of your one-day challenge art. But I have made this cool border in Photoshop. To show you that a little bit better, let me go ahead and open up Photoshop. So here's my Photoshop document that I've made. Kind of cool. I'm just going to use it as a little border down at the bottom for little page numbers. Maybe I'll put them in the bottom left-hand corner of my work. But otherwise, your page should look like this. You should have a little image next to your cursor. So what you want to do is if you set up your document right, you should be able to click in the top left-hand corner. And now look, that is easy enough to place my little border art. The cool thing is that the Adobe programs talk to one another. So you can literally file place Photoshop documents, Illustrator documents, InDesign documents, back and forth between one another, and it all works out. It's great, okay? Adobe thought ahead about that. The one difficulty that almost all of you will have, I guarantee, will be this. Trying to understand how to work the frames of it, all right? So this, in other words, would be a graphics frame. All right, we kind of reviewed that. If I didn't have any artwork, it would look a little something like this. It would have that X going through it, signifying that a graphics will eventually go there. But for most of you, this is what you are seeing on your screen. Notice whenever I hover over the center, there's that little tiny circle here. Okay, that is the image control circle. So what happens with our frames is basically we have the frame that the image resides in. It stays in there, okay? But you can move your image around in the frame. You can even move your image out of the frame, but it will begin to delete the image, and here's why. All right, picture this frame as the home, okay? You can be outside of your home, inside of your home, depending on whatever you want to do. And our image is us, okay? So I can move my image around inside the home. Looks pretty cool. All right, nice. Notice what happens when I go outside of my original frame here. It starts to get a little bit see-through. And that's because I am moving my image outside of its frame, okay? So that is an easy way how to crop your image, but don't get confused by it, okay? I've seen plenty of people that they try to move their frame, okay? And instead they move their image, and then the next thing they know, they're like, Mr. Thom, where's my image? I can't find it, all right? And all I'm doing to move my image is I'm just hovering over that center circle, click, holding, and dragging, and I can move that image back. Even if you click on that center circle, you will notice that my outline from my frame, if I just click, turns orange. That is because now I am controlling where the image is. So the orange outline is your image outline. If I click away and click back on to my frame, you will notice it is a blue outline. That is how you will move the frame and the whole image inside of it. So InDesign can get rather confusing very quickly based on where your frame is and then where your actual image is, okay? So just try to keep track of where your image is and how big or location of your frame is. To easily grab your frame and drag it, hover over the edge of it. You should have a little black dot next to your cursor showing that you are selecting the frame and that you can move the frame. Now, I don't want this frame to be completely the size of my document, so I'm actually going to size it down a little bit just so that it's right at the bottom of my screen there. All right, so I've handled that page, okay? Well, we're going to have page numbers on our other side here too. So I'm just going to click on that specific frame, and much like we did earlier with copying frames, I am going to copy and paste this specific little work of art that I have, this little border art. So all I do is press and hold Control and hit C again, as in Charlie, and V as in Victor, and that is the simple keyboard shortcut to move or copy and paste. All right, so now I'm going to move this over to the right side of the paper. And you're probably like, Mr. Thom, that kind of doesn't look right. In order to transform things in InDesign, it's a little bit different. You can't just hit Control-T like you would in Photoshop. What you have to do is you need to actually right-click on the frame, and you can go up to Transform, and one of your options is Flip Horizontally, which will allow it to flip left to right. You would also see that there's plenty of other options in Transform. We can move it, scale it, rotate it. Shear is a little bit advanced. I'd kind of steer away from that one. But we could also flip it vertically if we wanted to flip it upside down. And if you accidentally make a move that you don't want, same controls. Control-Z to undo. So that looks like it would be a pretty good opening of a book with some type of cool page numbers in the corner. Now let's get back to the whole grand scheme of why I'm showing you this. Master pages. Remember, we've been working in master pages the whole time. If you click back to your original pages document, so like let me go ahead and double click on my title page. Now every single one of those pages has my border art. How cool is that? It just repeats over and over. Whatever you put on the master pages, it's going to be there in all of your other pages. Even the same with the graphics box. Maybe you're going to put some type of art up here in the left-hand corner. All right. Now notice if I go right back, double click, every single one of my works of art has those specific little graphics box, at least over on the right-hand side, because it's only on the right-hand box. If I were to put a larger one on the left-hand side, now I got another graphics box there on the left-hand side. So let me get rid of those real quick. Again, easy way to delete. Use your selection tool, click on the frame that you want to delete, and just hit delete on your keyboard right above the arrow keys. Easy as that. Okay, cool. So pages, you've learned. Good stuff. Master pages, pretty cool. Facing pages, you should all know that vocabulary. Now it's time to move on to a little bit more advanced. So first things first, please be sure that you are back on your original document here, your work document. Okay? Because we're going to start typing. And what I want you to do is start up a nice type box so you can actually use your little T right over there for a type box. And let's create some type of cool title. So I'm going to make a pretty large type box here. And I am going to use my selection tool and make this somewhat of nice numbers. So you can see all I did was click, hold, and drag, and it's about 7.5 inches in width, this box, but I'm going to hit the little down arrow to make this a perfect 6 inches tall as well. Be sure to position it well. I want to kind of line this up with the margins. This is going to be a pretty big title. But back to typing. So again, if you're lost right now, please be sure to pause the video, look back on the video. That is why I record these. That way you can watch them multiple times and you don't really need to flag me down because you're an independent learner. So let's go ahead and activate the type tool. And if you click inside your box already, you can see there is the little type cursor. Now, as we've learned, if I start typing and there's that line, it's because my type is too small. So what I have to do is highlight it all and size up my font. So let's try, oh, didn't even highlight it. Let me try to highlight that a little bit better here. Come on. May even have to zoom in here. Oh boy, those letters are small. Okay, now let's size them up. 60. A little bit more visible, that's good. Okay, so we're gonna name this book something quite flattering here, so. Yes, okay, so that'll be the title of our book. Great, all right. So carrying on, nope, gotta do my correct capitalizations here. So what we will be doing is editing this title. I'm gonna show you some cool things called leading, as well as I am going to show you how to adjust the color and add some effects, much like in Photoshop, but you don't need to go into Photoshop to do all this crazy stuff, only to place it in InDesign. InDesign can actually do a lot of things, surprisingly. Some people only use InDesign for creating some type of publication. But let's carry on with things. All right, so I am going to highlight this text, and I want you to center justify it. We're going to give it a nice formal look, okay? And we'll kind of go over the looks here soon enough. So let's find a good place to kind of add a little paragraph enter here. So I'm going to delete the space in between is and the and hit enter. Okay, so we have formed a nice two-level title here. So what I want you to do next is play around with something called leading, okay? So what leading is defined vocabulary term-wise as the baseline to baseline. A baseline is the lower edge of all of the letters. So view it as almost like an invisible line. I'll even use the line tool here to show you. So right at the bottom of M all the way over to S, that is a baseline, okay? It's this invisible line that stretches underneath all of those letters, okay? As well as the baseline right down in our second line of text. The bottom of the T to the other bottom of the T. That are the baselines of those lines, okay? So our leading right now, if I double click on my text to reactivate it here, you'll notice that my leading is 72 points, but you're like, Mr. Thom, you use 60-point font. What's going on? They actually added an extra 12 point of space in between. Otherwise, our letters would be breathing on top of each other, okay? So what we're going to do is we can adjust our leading. So watch what happens when I adjust it to something as small as 36. Bam. Okay? We literally crunch the letters closer and closer together. So if I type something in 36-point font, it would fit in between the baseline of my top line and the baseline of my bottom line of text. Okay? So that looks a little bit too crowded for me. And 72 seemed like a good distance, but maybe not enough. I'm going to go ahead and type in something a little extreme here. I'm going to go with 144. That seems like a pretty good spacing to me. Now, if you want to add some space up top, right above your letters, okay, this is where the paragraph comes in. So, if I click on my little paragraph adjustment menu, there are all of these little options for spacing. We could add spacing off to the left a little bit. You can see that's how I shift my letters to the right. Because you're adding space to the left, of course, they're going to shift to the right. Same thing the other way. You could add more space to the right, shifting your letters left. You can do a lot of things with all of your paragraphs, okay? So I'm going to go with a little bit more edgy of a look. On second thought, this formal centered look kind of doesn't do it for me. It's a little bit too boring. So a lot of artists actually use right aligned text just to keep it kind of fresh. Your eyes kind of find that going not to the same place is rather exciting. So what I'm going to do is keep that right aligned, and if I highlight my text yet again, I can actually use this little area right here to adjust the space in between as well, okay? So if I were to add another enter up top, I could also highlight that center line, and what this little icon is space before. So I can even, let me double check here, type in like -14, or not -14 inches, -1 inch, and if I hit enter, gives me the error message. All right, so normally what would happen is we could actually hover over this top one here, and the other workaround, some newer software allows you to input some negative values. Since we're working with CS5, I can adjust the leading on here as long as I highlight my text properly, and watch what happens when I go 60. That is how I can add that little space up top there, okay? So if you want to move around your text a little bit, go ahead and pause the video right here. Get it to where you like where the text is placed on the piece of paper. Again, I apologize about the negative value not working. Instead, we just kind of adjust the leading baseline to baseline from that little extra enter that I put up there to my second line. And again, you can adjust leading right up here. Cool. All right, so another place to adjust the leading, and the next place we're going to go, is the character menu. So notice that we still have all of our different leading options right here. All right, it's blank because we have two different leading values here. We have 60 up top and 144 down below. So InDesign is just going to keep that blank. This is also where you can adjust how wide your letters are. You can kind of warp them. So for instance, the height, rather than being at 100%, watch what happens when I go 200. It stretches them tall. And then if I do the same thing on the other side, maybe I make this one a little bit less. So rather than being at 100% width, if I go 50, they're even skinnier, okay? So you can adjust all of the text as such. Pretty simple. So go ahead and adjust it to something that you like. Maybe use a different font. Mess around with that a little bit. So book's looking pretty good, or our magazine. So in which case, what I'm going to show you next is probably one of the cooler things that InDesign can do. All right, we're going to go ahead and change the color of this text real quick. So what we are going to do is we are going to actually adjust the color of the text. Now, if you notice, you expand the color adjustments panel, and you cannot see any color other than black and white. All right. If you want more colors, you got to use this drop-down menu here, those little 3 bars with the arrow next to it, and you got to select CMYK. Only then will you unlock the colors. So now I can make my colors kind of a deeper blue or a lighter blue to match my little outer glow that I did down at the bottom there. And that's looking pretty cool. So on to the next cool thing that Photoshop or that InDesign can do, and that is we can actually add effects to InDesign. So much like we would add effects to Photoshop, you want to activate your little selection tool. Be sure that that text frame is selected, and then you want to right click, and you can come on down to effects, and here's all the different effects. Look, they even have drop shadow and inner shadow and outer glow and inner glow, bevel and emboss, just like Photoshop. Okay, you can even adjust the transparency, make it a little see-through. So please use these effects. They are so cool. Adding that little 3D illusion to your work will make it look like it's jumping off the page. This is how most designers, by creating that 3D illusion, give their little flat books, flat magazines, that extra edge, that extra cool looking illusion. So be sure that your mode stays on normal, and if you checkbox the little preview down in that corner there, you should be able to move this little window out of the way and see your adjustments. So you can adjust the color pretty easily just by going CMYK and adjusting these little scroll bars here. So maybe if I want to add some type of, red shadow would go along with my little border art there. So I'm going to make that red, and that's going to be pretty cool. So, yep, not bad. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and click OK. All right, go ahead and adjust any of these values. X offset is how far the shadow goes off to the right. Y offset is how off it goes up and down. And you can actually get into the negatives. So I didn't lie, there is some negative values in InDesign. And go ahead and mess around with some of the other effects. In the grand scheme of things, that is all I need to show you today. So in total, what we've learned is, again, the Windows drop-down menu, all of the different adjustments, the cool controlling factor of master pages, that you can file place different files from Photoshop or Illustrator. You've learned what leading is, and you've learned effects. So that concludes my lesson for today. I hope you've learned more than a thing or two. Be sure to save. So go ahead and file Save As, and we are going to save this as tutorial 2. Thank you for being awesome.